Hello and welcome to The Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Samueli, and with me today is the founder of The Gaggle TV, Peter Lavelle, host of RT talk show Crosstalk. We've been discussing over the past couple of weeks what's happening in American politics, and in particular, whether the models that we've been thinking of are applicable to today. The models is 1968. Violence in the cities, crime appeared to be out of control. There's a kind of a revolutionary spirit in the country. And to whom did the benefit redound? Not to the revolutionaries, not to the left, but to Richard Nixon and the Republican Party. And it's very tempting to think, well, the same thing will happen now. We see the riots in Wisconsin, we see them in Minnesota, we see them in Portland, Oregon, and we tend to think, oh, this will redound to the benefit of Donald Trump, the law and order man, the man who will come and protect the public. But I wonder, Peter, whether this model is indeed applicable. Is the United States in 2020 the same country it was in 1968? I'm not at all sure it is. What do you think?
I think the first thing is that we have to get our head around is that Nixon had the advantage of not running as an incumbent. Okay, he was running against the Democrats in power. It was Lyndon Johnson, and then it would be Hubert Humphrey. The argument I have made that I've pushed back with the 68 analogy is that Trump as an incumbent has a harder time running as a law and order candidate. However, my mind is slowly but surely beginning to change on that, because if you look at his speech, not the entire convention, he is bringing back the populist flavors that he ran on in 2016, and I don't think he was totally successful, but he did look like the candidate against the system. But he is the system because he's in it. See, that's the difficulty that he's having. But I think that he's making some kind of headway. He did get a bounce. But to your point, it's just the demographics are so much different because from 68 we had what was called white flight, where we had a lot of people, white people leaving the cities. Okay, and so you have a very different demographic situation, and in 68 we had the Vietnam War. All right, unfortunately, I lament this every single day. The anti-war movement is essentially non-existent right now, and we should do a separate video on that. And in this time round, it is also we had amazing prosperity in 1968. Okay, amazing. I mean, in toto for the 1960s. All right, amazing. One of the most prosperous decades in human history, I would say. And now we are in what could be called the Greater Depression, depending on who you are and where you are in the economy. So, but it really gets down to, and we have to really distill it, does the message of law and order make people rethink? And I think in this case, I think the most common political affiliation in America in this election is independent, non-aligned, non-affiliated. And it's really who these people are going to react to. And I think Trump is going to get some traction out of it because, these cities are all democratically run, or almost all of them are. Okay, so the politics and ideology are preeminent for them, predominant. But, as we saw Don Lemon and Chris Cuomo, they're beginning to realize this is a gross miscalculation because people are to say, enough is enough. Okay, I'm sick and tired of seeing
I agree. I agree with all that. But where I would be a little bit cautious is if you look at America in 1968, you had in Chicago, the mayor of Chicago was legendary Dick Daley. We saw at the Democratic National Convention what he thought of the protesters, what he thought of the radicals and the students. This was he hated Nixon, but boy, he had no time for the left.
He loved the hard hats.
Yeah, exactly. So you had him. You had the leaders of organized labor. These are tough guys. These were very powerful men. I mean, organized labor is just a joke now, but they were very powerful people. They were, of course, Democrats. Again, they hated Nixon, but they would brook no nonsense from communists, leftists, Trotskyists, radicals. Absolutely, they wouldn't have anything to do with them. Look at the governors at the time. You had Ronald Reagan in California. You had George Wallace down in Alabama. This is you're Nelson Rockefeller. I mean, he's set Nelson Rockefeller as a liberal. I mean, we saw him in Attica. This is no liberal guy. So it was a different country, and so you kind of wonder whether that kind of law and order message, which resonated in '68, would resonate today. You have the cities. Chicago, it's not run by Dick Daley anymore. And most of the cities are run by liberals who are quite happy to see chaos and violence because they think it will be bad for Trump, but they also think that they've got a lock on the cities. They're going to win anyway. Bill de Blasio was re-elected, one of the worst mayors in New York's history. He was re-elected. So it doesn't even matter.
The worst thing that can happen to you is you'll be primaried in your own party, but the party is going to win. Okay? Yes. Yes. I mean, I think the caveat now, because of the demographic changes from '68 to the present, and that's essentially suburbia, and it's going to be suburbanites. They're going to be watching the cable TV and saying, is this going to come to me? Okay, because I think, when you get outside of these democratically run cities, I mean, there are a lot of conservatives. I mean, if you look at the map by county, how Trump did in '16. I mean, in the blue is just an archipelago on the East Coast, and a little island in the middle of the country. I mean, these are red counties, okay? But because of the the voter mass that you have in these larger cities, it distorts everything. Okay, I mean, a state that went blue might have just gone blue by 100,000 votes. Okay, and I think that this is the issue here, is that when you get outside of these democratically run cities, which they don't care about, they're running to the ground. Okay. Because you're going to get primaried, another Democrat's going to come in. So it's the same thing. There's no downside. You don't lose. And you'll end up getting a job, somewhere else in the system, as they call it. So I think the suburbanites of all colors and professions, I think they're going to say, hey, that's why my parents or grandparents got out of those cities, okay? Right. And I don't want it to come here. And I think that's going to start resonate with people. Right. It's going to be the suburban issue. Go ahead.
No, I agree. But the fact is, the cities are demographically dominant in these states. I mean, if you look at New York State, it's dominated by New York City. So, you say, well, New York is a liberal state. Well, New York City is liberal, but, much of New York is actually conservative. The people who live upstate, the people who live in the suburbs, they're rather conservative, but they are overwhelmed by New York City. Same goes in Illinois. Again, you have Chicago. Chicago is the dominant demographically. That determines which way Illinois goes. So that's, and you think of what the Democrats now have. They have California. Remember, California was always Republican. Always. I mean, Gerald Ford carried.
I went in high school. It was Republican. It was deep Republican when I was in high school in Orange County.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was, Ronald Reagan, Nixon himself came from California. Up until 1988, even George H.W. Bush carried California. Now it's completely Democratic. And again, dominated by the cities. And again, through demographic change. So you basically got, with New York, California, Illinois, all permanently Democratic. the Democrats have a really, have a very strong leg up already to get to the electoral college that they need, which wasn't the case in '68.
The interesting thing for me is that if you looked particularly at the Democratic convention, all of the genuflecting towards identitarian politics. I mean, I think it's very, very cynical because they've looked at against this, suburban America that their level of quote unquote sophistication, they don't identify with the quote unquote average Republican. And so this Black Lives Matter, it's actually kind of soothes your conscience. But if the pitchfork is coming for you, then you have a very different attitude about that because, it's Black Lives Matter in New York, Black Lives Matter in Chicago. But, when the rioters come to my neighborhood, I'm not really sure. I don't live in America, so I'm just saying that would be my feeling. Is that at a certain point you can have this kind of emotional reaction to politics, but when it comes to push, comes to shove, you're going to say no. I want to be able to call the police. Okay, and I really do. I spend a lot of money on this house. Okay, so. And I think that that's something that's being put into play right here. And the thing is the Democrats, when we think of this campaign, we don't have any sense of timing because the primary was artificial and fake and surreal, and the conventions were too. And voting is going to happen, is beginning to happen in a matter of weeks right now. And the Democrats are hoping that they can roll this out, and people will accept it. And now we're beginning to say, there's beginning to be a pushback here. It could turn into a cascade effect too, if they're not careful here. So it's really very interesting balance right here because it's going to be, look, the RNC and the Democrats, they put all of their effort into suburbia, the suburbs. They don't care. I'm sorry, my personal opinion. They didn't do it because they care about people of color. They don't. They care about power.
Well, I think it's really comes down to the numbers. Are those people in the suburbs? Are there enough of them to overwhelm the vote of the inner cities?
It's going to be. It's going to
be very tight. Yeah, and so it worked for Nixon. I'm just not sure that that's the same rules will apply now. So we just have to see. Wisconsin is just as in 2016. It's going to be very tight, and look, we're seeing. Yes, there are riots in Minneapolis. Does that mean that Trump is going to win Minnesota? Maybe, but I wouldn't bet on it. So, I think we should be just wary of automatically assuming.
I think also one last thing before we finish up. One last thing that's going to be really important here is that a lot of the stimulus / bailout aid has already dried up or will dry up soon. And I think we can't forget the economic impact here. Is that, I mean, if you're in going to a food bank, getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning, you can't even work because you have to get food for your family. We have to believe that's going to be part of the equation as well.
Absolutely. No, it's going to be very much economics because ultimately people are going to take out their frustration on the president. They've always done that. That's what the Democrats are counting on. It may well work for them. So blame Trump for everything may well be a good strategy. All right, fascinating discussion, Peter. And we will be back soon.
Subscribe.
And exactly. And if you like the Gaggle TV, please like, share, and subscribe. I've learned the lines. All right. Thank you. See you soon.
How many minutes was that, George?
Just under 15.
Good. I didn't want to do this.
No. I'm keeping my eyes on it. Oh God. I'm stopping.
Getting better.